Good morning. Months ago, the issue of oil subsidy came to the forefront of our national debate on politics. We saw a nation rise up, united against a policy that it deemed radically destructive to its welfare. Subsidizing products is not a strange nor new concept in many economies. In fact, China, a world economic power, has been subsidizing many of its products, from farming to industrial, for decades. Subsidies, when used wisely, do give greater advantage to the producing nations in terms of cost of production, create employment, and regulate prices to avoid inflation. Oil companies in America receive incentives in many ways from government, which could be seen as subsidies. What has made Nigeria's oil subsidy so unique, controversial, and disheartening is the fact that a nation so vastly rich in oil cannot maintain its own oil refineries that would naturally generate and create wealth and opportunity for its teeming population and give government the resources it needs to invest in its people. Rather, the nation has been importing oil from refineries from neighboring nations. Obviously, $8 billion is a lot of money in a nation like Nigeria. But the difference still remains. And if government could take the right and bold steps in checking the abuses and fraud associated with our overall oil production and refining, the abuse that we experience today that controls our price of goods and services would have diminished a long time. There are those with proximity to power and those in power who are in cahoots with each other. This ring of connection is the unholy alliance, the most detrimental force behind the economic freeze or stagnation of Nigeria's progress. The president cannot deny the presence of this ring, and obviously can neither dislodge nor even confront it. Their identities are well known. Their roles in sabotaging the destiny of the nation is profound, and unfortunately, they are untouchable. Some Nigerians choose to call them cabals, but in my opinion, these are the enemies of the nation. And if any leaders, including the president, is serious about moving the nation forward, these forces must be neutralized timely. They are at the epicenter of Nigeria's problems. The recent promise of prosecuting those who are over-invoicing and manipulating the subsidy process by the government is nothing but empty rhetoric that we know too well, and that it does not have the backbone to even point one accusing finger. This is why none of Nigeria's oil refineries is operating today. This is why the nation is losing $8 billion to oil subsidy. It is the price paid to Nigeria's oracle, if you know what I mean, to appease the power ring and earn their support for power, when just a small fraction of it could have been expended to fortify the arms of the law and prevent such economic hostage taken by a few. When the law and the lawless are in cahoots, only a few benefit. If all things have been equal and fair, if the nation had long subjected all its citizens to the rule of law, we would not have to pay off any powers for our own very existence, nor look the other way when we know individuals are undermining our overall well-being. And now, since the government is already facing since the nation is already facing high price of goods and services due to the sudden and untimely attempt to remove oil subsidy, I think it's equally time that we address our energy needs, bearing in mind that the uncertainty of elections in our nation is grossly antithetic to any kind of economic progress. You cannot reach the North Pole by going west. And it is either that our present leaders do not understand the correlation between energy, power, and progress, or are simply paying lip services buying time to fill their bank accounts and make their great escape. They cannot and should not be taken serious. If we desire true progress, if we desire a much more modernized nation, we must be willing to invest our resources in both hydroelectricity and other sources of energy, most importantly, the solar and the wind energy technologies. For years, the federal government has opined that it's not able to produce enough energy to ensure power sufficiency across the nation, and essentially allowed NEPA to ration energy. If one is lucky to live close to a top government official, then more likely he or she would enjoy consistent energy supply, and there are no moments when power is miraculously restored to areas being visited by top government officials, or when certain individuals have to bribe the NEPA technicians. The past decade and a half, many Nigerians have often insisted that NEPA has been so corrupted that its lack of efficiency is nothing but a calculated, premeditated effort in connivance with government to encourage importation of electric generators into the nation. And the fact that our national government does not treat NEPA's inefficiency as serious and apply enough resources and weight to comprehensively resolve energy shortage lends some degree of credibility to this public sentiment. The adverse economic consequence on the nation apart, the health implications of the overwhelming number of generators used in Nigeria daily cannot be denied. The past 2 decades, we have witnessed the presence of diseases once foreign and the multiplicity of some indigenous illnesses. Fuel-burning generators are sources of air pollution, and nothing is safe from air pollutants, including food, water, and given the fact that neither the government nor private individuals are seeking any help to unravel the degree of culpability of pollution to the rate of illness and death in the nation, it is right to assume that they do not care. We have scenarios where every unit of one house is using generator, and I cannot even begin to imagine the quality of air around these houses. Over time, the pollution from air spreads across our nation and wreaks havoc on overall health of Nigerians. Fuel-burning generators are environmentally dangerous. Given this fact and other factors, it is most essential that Nigeria seeks and diversifies its energy sources and comprehensively confront the 5-decade-old dilemma of energy instability. The giant of Africa cannot afford to remain this inefficient, this apathetic to the new innovative sources of energy around the world. When nations like Cameroon and Ghana are celebrating yearly energy constancy. And even more sadly ironical is the fact that some of these neighboring nations are feeding off from our own Nigeria's power source. It is the same transmission grids that are originating from Nigeria. Obviously, we are not being honest or realistic as to our reason for failure. Is it a lack of well-trained field technicians, or simply the same arrogant, carefree attitude on the part of Nigeria's government and institutions' employees? It is time we accept the challenges before us and enlist energy as a new frontier we must only conquer, or continue to glide along as yet another third world nation. We must summon the will and resources to overcome this eternal failure and set our goals and priorities to achieve a comprehensive energy solution. Today, some of our cities and towns go through long months with less than 100 hours of electricity. Our international airports are sometimes without power, and the most unfortunate is the sudden loss of power in hospitals and clinics at the most critical moments of medical operations. Yet NEPA and the federal government continue to make excuses for such colossal disgrace. When electricity bills arrive, Nigerians are billed as if they have had power for 24 hours of every day. These are simply outrageous, over the fraud of the public, and our government is sadly an accomplice to this fraud. No extraneous powers or influences impede our ability to be energy sufficient but ourselves. Our sense of right and wrong, good and bad, are impaired and diminished by the double agents of corruption and mediocrity. Consider a nation like Iran. 40 and 50 years ago, Iran and some of these nations we are now importing from were just struggling as third-world nations. As dangerous and unsettling as the decision by Iran to seek nuclear weapons, from a philosophical and technological standpoint, Iran is demonstrating great scientific achievements. It's a clear, bold evidence that any nation resolved to excel will most certainly succeed. While Iran should be strongly discouraged, we cannot deny the fact that its effort to train its engineers as nuclear scientists, organize and manage intricate logistics involved is both thought-provoking, if not inspiring. If it has sought such technology for the right reasons, Iran definitely will be one of the great economic powers of our time. Sometimes you have to give your opponent his due. This is the kind of resolve Nigeria needs. If the Nigerian government can genuinely resolve to ensure that it has more than enough energy to serve its population, resolve to push the economy to full employment, resolve to restore true justice, resolve to end government institutional inefficiency and paralysis, it can do so without much hindrance. What is missing today in Nigeria is that unique, unrelenting determination to succeed as a nation. Instead, we choose to succeed as individuals. The fact has been made clear to us. Our nation's energy infrastructure cannot produce enough energy for the nation. But that ought not to be the end of the story. It ought to have been the beginning of a feverish hunger and quest for answers, for alternative sources, and not the alternative forgone. Energy cannot be substituted. The state and cost of our inability to produce enough energy is far too enormous to ignore. The economic and psychological ramifications are huge, and the impact on the psyche of Nigerians. It adds to their level of misery, and anyone can dispute it. So we must reconcile the facts that science and technology advances are readily available to solve our problem, that we have the resources to solve them, but simply do not have the will to do so, because our leaders do not see it as basically a necessity. To continue to believe that only one or a few sources of power or energy are enough to generate the vast energy needed for a nation with over 150 million people is total ignorance. The time has come for Nigeria to decentralize its energy sources either regionally or state by state, as well as diversify it. 4 to 6 regional power plants using natural gas is within our means. Or on smaller scales, each state would have to determine where and how it intends to build its power plant. It is not new for a nation to use foreign companies, and if there's one industry that urgently needs expert technical ideas, it is NEPA. A total subcontracting of the management of electricity supply should be a welcome relief from decades of NEPA's failure. And we cannot continue to ignore other sources of energy when many nations are investing in them and utilizing them. From India to many Arab nations, the solar industry is receiving enormous attention as well as capital. These nations and others are building solar panel manufacturing factories every day. The natural abundance of the sun in a nation like Nigeria is nature's gift we must have to harvest. No matter what policies and industries our federal government enacts, builds, or is supposed to build, without guaranteed energy, they are simply financial weights. Nigeria cannot achieve any kind of meaningful modernization without it. The fact that almost all our villages and towns, big and small, are constantly in darkness both day and night is unfortunate. Today, even some African villages, with the help of foreign agencies, are using solar panels to light up the environment. And that is a clear testimonial that solar panels work. and in due time could replace hydroelectricity. And the cost per pole is even less than 30,000 naira in some places. While solar energy is new, still evolving, we can use them to light up our streets all across the nation. A one-time huge investment is cost-effective and good for the environment on the long run. Our northern parts of the nation are well suited for wind energy, given their higher elevations. We can produce more gigabytes of electricity through alternative sources, freeing the huge pressure on our present electricity grids. While there are still problems with cost of crystallized silicon cells used to make solar panels and condensing the intermittent energy for storage for future use, alternative energy is the new frontier we must engage both our energy and resources to obtain. While daily and seasonal weather conditions are factors to be considered, we stand to gain significantly over time. If President Jonathan and the federal government are seeking lasting energy solutions, they must encourage the diversification of our energy sources. And not only diversification, they must seek the technical know-how to maintain them. Building wind turbines and solar panels are financially lucrative as well as psychologically liberating for a nation that has long been literally in the dark. Again, electricity is not a luxury but a necessity. It should be placed on the same levels with our national security and other major pressing issues. A good combination of both hydroelectricity and alternative energy is urgently needed, and government should not hesitate to provide the necessary funding for this new initiative. This will give many of institutions more stability. But our universities and college students are going back to the studying with lamps and candles, global warming becoming more and more a real phenomenon, the need to ensure consistent energy ought to be a major priority. We should have a race for this new technology. Increased high temperature and humidity across Africa generally will necessitate a new way of looking at home construction and a greater demand for air cooling systems. We must be prepared for these changes and for modernization. I simply believe our misfortunes are reversible given the right leadership. But we must act now and act soon before it's too late. As we prepare every 4 months to elect new governments and individuals, we have the utmost responsibility to lend support to men and women who have done their leadership homework and understand comprehensively the role of government in effecting the kind of changes that enables everyone to succeed and not just a few. We cannot perpetually be this important and consuming nation. The loss and risks of lacking a strong manufacturing base is enormous. We are totally ignorant of the nature of materials used in these imported goods. How safe are they for human consumption? It is overdue for us to simply roll our sleeves and go to work sufficiently for the nation, and equally import goods and services to other nations to create wealth in our nation. Yesterday, I read about the federal government instituting a global broadcasting equipment, and I'm wondering, are we lacking in news? Is Nigeria's news not going out enough that we should spend all these resources in just an equipment for news? When we are faced with such security risks around us, with Boko Haram blowing up places, attacking police and army, I think, folks, this is the wrong priority. It's the wrong choice of what our needs are. The Nigerian government should be spending our resources in dealing with our security and not in broadcasting. Thank you, and may God continue to bless you.